Hey, I'm Seth.
And I'm Phil.
And we're Becoming Relevant.
And today's topic is video game music.
Welcome to Becoming Relevant, the show where our guests shed light on niche topics as well as give a new perspective on broader ones.
We're joined by Benji Inniger. Hi, Benji.
Hey,
Hi, gentlemen. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Benji is a composer and sound designer of all sorts of anything sound, actually. So tell us about yourself.
I'm kind of a habitual dabbler, I think is a good way to do that. And so the bulk of my experience comes from the theater world. I kind of found a nice niche there, writing music for theater. When I got into it, not a lot of people were doing that. And that kind of branched out into all sorts of other fun media projects and video games and lots of music to be written and sound to be tampered with.
So talk to us more about the video games. That's kind of what we want to focus on today.
Sure.
How recently did you get into video games?
I guess I'm coming up on close to my second year doing this stuff, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, I'm still pretty young in this industry too. What's interesting about video games compared to other media forms and such is that games are very slow and very meticulous, and so I guess I'm kind of coming to learn that you don't meet people as rapidly, as frequently as you might in other meetings, just because the pace of a game moves so slowly. Another interesting thing is you know, video games are such a hot button thing right now, is that it's becoming a little bit more by the day a saturated market. And so, you know, finding those gigs that are a good fit for you and for the developer and all that stuff are few and far between. So it takes a little bit to find those gigs that are really great, but when you do find them, it's incredibly rewarding and a lot of fun. So when I first started getting into this, it just like anybody pretty much who works in video games now, you start as a fan, right? It's like video games are great. They do this for me. You know, I think it's one of the most impactful mediums in terms of storytelling. Its storytelling potential is just through the roof. Writing music for theater and video games are remarkably similar. A good story is a good story, and telling a good story through music translates really well over those mediums. And so somebody suggested to me, he's like, hey, I have a friend I went to high school with. He's a developer out he's in Austin, Texas. Can I put you in touch with him just to see what happens? So I did. I went for it, and it is a bigger developer, and you know, one that is looking for an experienced person. But he was very patient with me bothering him about this, and he looked through my portfolio and said, like, you know, I see that you have some potential here. Here's a great way to get started. But I started on Reddit, frankly. As strange as that is, Reddit and I didn't know this at the time, but Reddit has an insanely amazing artistic community and creative community. There's a sub for, it's called Game Developer Classifieds, and so went on there. It's kind of a matchmaking between, you know, people offering skills and people looking for skills. And I got my first game through that. And from there, I got recommended to another developer, another one through Reddit here and there, and you just kind of piece it together over time.
Yeah. When you're first contacted by a developer, or you make that connection that you spoke of, what's the next step? What happens next?
Sure. So I try to get as close of a clue as to what the project entails as I can. Is it this type of game? Is it this? What kind of pace are they looking for? What kind of, you know, trying to piece together all those questions. Game developers kind of historically keep their cards really close to the vest, and so it's a little bit different with indie developers. They're, you know, wanting to put out a lot of information, but still, it's a little interesting sometimes trying to piece together exactly what people want, because there's that element of fun secrecy. What I do is after doing that, introduce myself, introduce kind of my background, what I think I'm good at, that kind of stuff, and then try to offer some examples from my previous work that might, you know, might fit what they're looking for. And then maybe offer, like, start with this track, listen to this, maybe we could go in that direction, and always try to, you know, look towards the future with something that already exists, if that makes sense.
How much of your instrumentation do you do any of it live? Is it all synthetic?
That's a great question. It really depends on the project, of course. Every time there's where it seems like everything is going synthetic, put something in that's live, because there's always that wonderful addition of human error, of human imperfection that kind of glues things together, I think. So even if it's outer space fighting game or something that, you know, clearly is synth driven and all this stuff, put something in there that humanizes the whole thing.
Moving more then to the technical side of things,
Yeah.
like what is your programs of choice? In audio, it's called a DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. What do you use? How did you start on that?
I'm a Steinberg guy completely, and so right now I run a Cubase 8.5 Pro, and what I like about that particular DAW after working with a bunch is that it handles raw audio versus virtual instruments equally well, in my opinion. And some others, like handle raw audio beautifully, but struggle a little bit in the virtual instruments, and that one's just a really nice combination of all those things. And plus, when you're choosing software, what you should do is what you feel comfortable with and what you're good at. I've had students and such ask me a lot. It's like, well, I'm going to buy something. What should I buy? It's like, try stuff. Something will fit you. There's no right thing. There's no, this is the ultimate thing, because they do a lot of the same things. You got to pick the one that's a good fit for you and that you're quick and comfortable with. And that's the one that turned out for me. It's the one I grew up on, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's cool.
One thing that I incorporated last year that's made all the difference of the world is something called Vienna Ensemble Pro. And what that is anybody who's used virtual instruments before, that they take up a ton of space, they require a ton of memory. And so what you can actually do is that you can put all of your virtual instrument files on a farmed out different computer from the one that you're actually using your DAW on. So all of those resources go to driving your DAW and all of the plugins and stuff that go there. But then you can farm out via the network so still in real time, I can pull up I could pull up a huge orchestra, live orchestra thing, and it comes off, one of the PCs instead of my Mac that's driving my DAW. And so it saves all that memory, and it's very, very fast. It's still in real time when I hit a key on the keyboard.
That's very cool.
So that's made an enormous difference. And every time you fill that up, PCs are relatively cheap to build.
For sure.
Yeah, and you can build as many as you want of them to house, whatever.
As much
So,
as you need,
yeah,
for sure.
So that's made a huge difference just in terms of organizing all that stuff and the speed that you can recall that stuff.
Let's touch more on your workflow, like overall, not just with video games, but in theater. So after you get an idea of, I'm assuming, the story, what happens from there?
Sure. I always try to boil it down to its key, or maybe the key is the wrong word. Try to boil it down to its essential emotional states, I guess you could say. And even sometimes that gets really simple. Is it sad? Is it happy? Is it funny? Is it, should it be tense? Should there be an absence of tension? Like that kind of stuff. And as basic and simple as that sounds, you can base a lot of your decisions on how you're going to direct what you're making. They're never going to end up that way. It's like, this project is happy. And by the end, it's not going to be, that project was happy. But as long as you give yourself that nice and friendly place to start, starting is one of the hardest things to do. So that's what I try to do. And then depending on, just in my skill set, coming up with basic. Sometimes it's a melody, this is going to be more of a narrative thing, so I need to come up with some melodies for this characters or this situation. Will I come up with a better melody if I start on piano or guitar or those kinds of things, because fingers move differently? And within my skill set, I'll find a better melody if I start on guitar or if I start on something else. If I start with just rhythms or percussion, like what's going to try to influence the direction the best, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Instrument of choice. What's your go-to?
I guess practically, it's got to be piano, just because it's capable of the most things, and also, it's a lot easier to turn in a computer environment. It's a lot easier to turn piano notes into other things. I've gotten really good at finger drumming. I can finger drum like no one's business. But it really, as far as just playing and making stuff, it really goes in waves, which is kind of the fun thing. I've been doing this for a while, is that you really, kind of get the hankering for, I want to play drums for a while, and so I'll play a lot of drums. It's like, last summer I went through a huge bass guitar thing, and so it's really kind of fun to kind of refresh those skills and learn more about the instruments as those whims kind of ebb and flow from you.
A lot of your work, I think, revolves around music. How much of that feels like work versus how much of that is just something you enjoy doing?
Sure. There has definitely been projects on both ends of that spectrum. I love things that are narrative based, and game-wise, I'm just starting to get into that realm. Because if you're doing something narrative based, those are the developments that take a lot longer and require a lot more people and effort and stuff like that, and not generally the things that you get when you're first starting out. So, it's really fun to make music and sound design for match 3s, mobile apps and stuff like that, but it doesn't allow for immersion that really kind of starts the artistic fire, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I have yet to have a game experience that has not been fun, that has not been enjoyable and met some cool people and stuff like that. But I'm finding about myself, I'm just such a narrative guy that the more story we can add something and the more that I can be immersed in, the more comes out of me as well. One thing that I never thought would happen that I just love is working with people from all over the world at the same time with game projects. And I've never been exposed to that before. And even just in the really short time that I've been doing this, I've been able to work with people pretty closely from, let's see, Sweden, Germany, Japan, India, Chile, Jamaica. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but it's just like, thanks internet, like we can all communicate at the same time. But what makes that extra interesting is that you do get everybody's different perspectives from how they grew up and stuff like that, which is exciting, but it also can slow down communication a little bit, or even not just even like spoken English or anything like that, but just rather concepts. And a lot of times when you're working artistically, you tend to use things like, metaphor and stuff, and the way that somebody in Sweden uses metaphor is different how I use metaphor. Sure. And so like those kind of things has been an interesting communication challenge, but always end up being the more rewarding in the end, I think. Because I know with a lot of my theater projects, I do it with folks that I've been working with for half my life. And so we have a vernacular. We have, I know what you're going to do, and that works really efficiently and well. And so as you build trust and as you build, communication skills with those people, I think it gets stronger and stronger.
What do you do when you're not doing music?
This summer is a really good example because it's been a particularly beautiful summer here in southern Minnesota. And I've kind of rediscovered my love of riding the bike, as simple as that sounds. But I found that kind of splitting my time before last summer, for instance, I felt like I was locked down in the studio all summer, which was really great and really fun, but harder to recharge. But this summer, finding a much better balance of, okay, I'm going to hit this really hard in the dark basement studio where artists belong. But then balance that out with, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a big, long bike ride. I'm going to come back tired and fresh and full of new ideas. And so another thing, too, is just kind of as a rule of thumb is I've kind of put in this summer is like, you know what? If I get frustrated on something or if I'm hitting a wall or writer's block or something, go walk the dog. He'll love it. I'll love it. I'll feel better. So that kind of thing. I mean, I love being outside and swimming and kayaking and walking with my wife and all that stuff is really fantastic. And finding that balance of taking care of yourself, mentally and not just, trying to crank stuff out all the time. You always get a better product out of yourself.
How much do you find yourself playing video games?
I love to play, but I'm trying to figure out what kind of a gamer I am. It's a weird question because some things that I've predicted that I would love, I haven't. So let me tell you this story, kind of how I got into this. It was sort of I played a little bit of video games when I was younger. I never had my own game console, but I always loved playing NES and Super Nintendo. It was actually like I could save up my paper route money to go and rent an SNES for the weekend, and that was, my life. PlayStation came out, Final Fantasy VII was the pinnacle of my life, and then I just kind of quit for a while. I don't know why. But my full-time job is I teach theater here at Bethany Lutheran College, and I teach a class called Period Style, which is kind of a historical study or a how do you apply history to a production study. And so we were going through the Greek unit and be like, if we were going to do a Greek play, this is what the buildings would look like. This is what costumes should look like. I love teaching this class. And I had a student who, as we were going through this, is like, have you ever played Assassin's Creed 2? And I was like, no, I've never heard of that. What is that? And he's like, you should really check this out. Forgive me, it wasn't the Greek unit, it was the Renaissance unit. And he's like, yeah, everything we're talking about, it's in this game. And I was, of course, super skeptical. And he's like, yeah, you can collect paintings that are real paintings from Renaissance artists and all this stuff. And so I went and checked it out. And I know this is a horrible pun, but it was kind of a video game renaissance in my life, too, because all of a sudden, video games weren't just, like the bleeps and bloops and, just kind of a fun distraction. Genuine pieces of serious art. And so, like, immediately I went and played through all of Assassin's Creed 2 and loved every second of it because it's so well historically researched. The art is beautiful. The music is beautiful. Jesper Kyd is the composer. He got me into this whole separate subgenre of music. Like, everything was like, wow, this medium has some serious art going on. And it just floored me. Now, of course, the fun little distraction games are fun too, but I'm still trying to figure out what kind of gamer I am and what's going to stick and not. But yeah, I love the Assassin's Creed series. Last of Us is one of my favorites of all time.
That is a great soundtrack, actually.
Oh, man,
That's a great,
yeah,
I have that album.
Yeah, it is just absolutely amazing.
So on that topic, do you have a favorite game overall that you've ever played? Or what's your favorite video game soundtrack?
Sure. Final Fantasy VII has to be up there because it kickstarted, at a younger age, it kickstarted sort of like what a narrative game could be in my brain. And I love the story of that game. And I've just, played it an embarrassing amount of times since that came out, 20 years ago or whatever it was. So that one still might be my favorite of all time. Last of Us is definitely up there just in terms of, it's probably the best storytelling that I've ever heard in my life. Best soundtrack, yes. I think I'm going to go with Austin Wintory's Abzu.
Okay.
Yeah, he is the composer for Journey,
Sure.
which is another very beautiful score. But he did this game with essentially the same people, different company called Abzu, which is sort of an underwater journey. So you're this like diver creature sort of thing. And I got into it because I'm a scuba diver and I love scuba diving and all, and I just love fish and sea life and stuff like that. And so you go through and they really took pains to create this beautiful art out of real fish, and it tells this story it's kind of like a be environmentally conscious story, and it's cool. But it's his score for that. I mean, he made for, I think it was something like an ensemble of 7 harps and a really interesting mix of choral voices and orchestra and stuff, and it's just completely beautiful. I think that might be my favorite OST of all time, yeah. Kind of the newest addition to my studio at home is I hauled home a piano soundboard. So just like the strings of a piano kind of intact and bolted it to the wall and stuff like that. And you can make the most crazy noises with just like a bare piano soundboard. So I posted a picture of that to this community of like 500 sound geeks from all over the world, and I was like, so who's played with this before? Like what should I do? What should I try? And just threads and threads and threads of ideas and just genuine enthusiasm sharing, which is really fun. So yeah, the internet's got such a great creative community. It's really changed kind of how I approach things and how you view, who your acquaintances are, who you view your the people that are doing the same stuff you are. It's information enthusiasm is really easily accessible now.
So what would you say to people who are really like considering just getting into working with audio, just in general?
Don't waste time on trying to master everything. Pick a thing that's good for you and be the master of that. Frankly, even if it's Audacity, be the master of Audacity because you can get a lot done. I know some pretty high-level professional podcasters who do everything on Audacity because it works and they're good at it. And so that's always a first thing to tell people is that, don't stress about the gear, don't stress about whatever. Find something that you have access to and be awesome at it. Even in these forms that are highly technological, and it always ends with people. I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever had, and what I tell people all the time, is that no matter what you're doing, work super hard at it and be nice to everybody. And frankly, like those two things, as simple as that is, will get you a lot of work because there's a lot of people out there who can't handle both of those at the same time. Even if you don't know something, if you're working really hard at it and if you can learn it or if you can get better at it while being really nice to people and patient in the process, you're going to work for the rest of your life. Between those two things, I know it sounds kind of basic, but that kind of covers the gamut, you know? Like if you're always improving, if you're always doing that and meeting people and treating people well, you're going to be just fine.
That's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you, Benji, for being relevant today.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Where can people find out more about your stuff online?
Sure. You can go to my portfolio website. It's herebenji.com, and the same on Twitter, herebenji.
Thank you. Once again, I'm Philip. This is Seth. And if you like what you see, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And support us on Patreon.
Stay relevant.